The rematch is here. Mavericks, Clippers, round 1, NBA playoffs, part 2. Can the Mavericks do something they haven't done in 10 years and win a playoff series by upsetting Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and the Los Angeles Clippers? This is the Gray Area right here on Kevin Gray Sports. My name is Kevin Gray. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to hit that subscribe button right there for all things Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. And you can catch me on your home of the Dallas Cowboys and Texas Rangers, 105.3 The Fan. Shout out to Adolis Garcia. The Dallas Mavericks are trying to end a 10-year playoff drought where they haven't won a series in the NBA playoffs since winning the NBA championship back in 2011. Luka Doncic, who burst onto the scene a season ago in the NBA playoffs with a 42-point debut, albeit in a 118-110 loss, the highest scoring playoff debut in NBA history, where he went on to average over 31 points per game, nearly 10 rebounds, nearly 9 assists in the 6-game series. His masterpiece of a performance in Game 4, where he dropped 43 points, 17 rebounds, and 13 assists in a virtuoso performance on a sprained left ankle, leading the Mavericks back from a 21-point deficit to win with an epic buzzer beater, 136-133. That kind of Luka Magic is going to have to be on display for this Mavericks team to pull off the upset against the Los Angeles Clippers. Yes, I know Luka Doncic is well on his way to another first-team All-NBA selection, averaging nearly 28 points per game, over 8 rebounds, over 8 assists per contest this season. Meanwhile, he's got the guys back that he didn't have a season ago in Dwight Powell coming back from a torn Achilles, Jalen Brunson coming back off of a shoulder injury. But the Clippers are a little bit different also. Yes, Rajon Rondo and the storyline of playing against Rick Carlisle is there. Yes, the whole deal with Marcus Morris, him stepping on Luka's ankle, getting into his mind, the physicality that comes with the defense of the Los Angeles Clippers. Also, you have Paul George, a guy averaging over 23 points per game, shooting over 41% from the three-point line. And then there, of course, is Kawhi Leonard, a 2-time Finals MVP, a 2-time NBA champion, looking to stamp his mark on a different kind of Clippers team that failed in the bubble in Orlando last season. But this is going to be about Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic, number 1 in the NBA in usage rate this year, number 1 in the NBA in terms of time of possession. Can he put the Mavericks on his back yet again to help them potentially get the upset over the Los Angeles Clippers? We know that last year in the playoffs, the Clippers employed their own kind of version, of you will, of the Jordan rules. I'll call them the Doncic rules. The physicality, the mind games, the trash talking, all of those things to give Luka Doncic a little bit of a taste of the playoff intensity that is the NBA playoffs. Luka Doncic met with the media, and we discussed the idea of what he has learned in these playoffs from a season ago that will help him this time around against Marcus Morris. I asked Luka Doncic, what's the biggest thing that you learned about the playoff experience a season ago against Marcus Morris and the Los Angeles Clippers? Here's what Luka Doncic had to say.
Hey, Luka, I'm curious to know, from last year to this year, in terms of your playoff experience, what was the biggest thing you learned about the intensity of the playoffs, knowing the things that guys like Marcus Morris and the Clippers were trying to do from a physicality standpoint?
I don't know, but I think that happens in every playoff series. So I think everybody's going to be ready for that.
He said, look, we expect this. This is the kind of thing that you're supposed to see in the playoffs. We're going to be ready for it. And that is going to be the biggest difference if the Mavericks are able to pull off the upset in this series, is that they are ready for the mind games and the physicality that comes with playing against the Los Angeles Clippers. As I mentioned, a Los Angeles Clippers team who this season alone, 8th in the NBA in defensive rating, number 3 in the NBA in terms of offensive rating. So you've got a top 10 offensive rating and defensive rating team, a deep team that has guys like Ivica Zubac who can rebound the basketball on the offensive glass very well. Serge Ibaka defensively with guys like Marcus Morris and others who are going to put pressure on you, possession over possession. And obviously, we mentioned it already, the number 1 three-point shooting team in all of the NBA, shooting over 41% from the three-point line as a team with 4 guys themselves, do the Los Angeles Clippers, who shoot at least 4 threes a game and make at least 40% of them. The Mavericks this season were 13th in the NBA in defending the three-point shot. That is going to be part of Josh Richardson's assignment in this series, guarding the likes of guys like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Yes, I know Maxi Kleber is going to be back and available for game number 1, and he will help defend on Kawhi Leonard, as Rick Carlisle has talked about in the past. But for Josh Richardson, he's going to need a little bit of redemption himself, given how poorly at times he's played for the Mavericks this season and the up and down and uneven nature of his performance, given the expectations for Josh Richardson coming over from the Philadelphia 76ers. I asked Josh Richardson about that idea of guarding Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and what is the most difficult part about guarding both of these players, especially with him being a primary defender on these two. Here's what Josh Richardson had to say.
And Jerry Rich, when you look at this lineup for the Clippers with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard as a primary perimeter defender, what's going to be, in your mind, the most difficult part about guarding these two that you're going to be looking to try and take away from these two guys?
It's going to be tough. You know, they're two great players that don't have really any weaknesses in their game. So, you know, it's going to be a group effort, and we're going to try to just, you know, make all their shots tough, just keep a hand up, and try to make them work for everything. Because if they just get going easy and everything like that, then it's going to be a real long series.
So Josh Richardson saying, look, we got to make things tough for Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, because otherwise, if we don't, it's going to be a long series for us against those two. And he's absolutely right. Dorian Finney-Smith, Josh Richardson, and Maxi Kleber are going to be instrumental in providing the kind of versatile defense on the perimeter against two guys that can score the basketball in a variety of ways. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts when it comes to Kawhi Leonard and his mid-range game. And, of course, Paul George has the ability to shoot the ball very effectively from the three-point line while also getting into the mid-range himself and putting the ball on the floor. So they're going to have their hands full, are the Dallas Mavericks. But this time, health is a little bit more on their side. Kristaps Porzingis played the final 3 games of the season after missing the previous 7 with right knee soreness. As I mentioned, Jalen Brunson and Dwight Powell are back for this team where they missed the playoffs a season ago. And it's going to be on this supporting cast to help Luka Doncic put this team in position where they are able to score the basketball effectively the way that they can. Tim Hardaway Jr., as a flamethrower, is going to have to be consistent throughout this series. But this is going to be about the mental edge that the Dallas Mavericks are going to have to play with. Remember, the Dallas Mavericks beat the Clippers 2 out of 3 times this regular season, including a 51-point beatdown in Los Angeles, where Game 1, of course, will be in this series. Here is Kristaps Porzingis talking about the fact that, look, we can't fall into the trap of the things and the mind games that Tyronn Lue and his Los Angeles Clippers team is going to throw at us in this series, because we've already had that experience. Here's what Kristaps Porzingis had to say.
Yeah, definitely. It'll probably happen, but we already know, who they are. We have to control our emotions. I don't regret stepping in that play to protect, whoever my teammate, because he got in his face and it was just chippy. But I regret that I reacted to the play when I thought I blocked Paul George cleanly, and then I threw the fist, and that's immediate technical. So I regret that play, and that's the type of play that I have to, be smarter and not react to it as emotionally. But the other one, I don't regret it all, and it is what it is, and so it's like we don't want to play into their game. They're gonna do that. They're gonna try to provoke us. So just tunnel vision, focus on what we need to do. Always have your teammates back. Don't back down, but don't do anything that gives them any advantage.
All right, thank you.
That was a good answer.
It was a good answer. Thank you.
So the Mavericks know what's coming with the Clippers. Physicality, mind games, and a physical disposition that will try to rattle them throughout this series. But that is where this team has matured. They have matured, especially when it comes to clutch time, 18 and 15 this season in the clutch, which was good for 10th in the NBA. We know that they have to get off the fast starts where they are 27-0 this season when leading after the first quarter. The Mavericks have played up to their competition this year. because you don't have to worry about playing teams like the Sacramento Kings in the NBA playoffs. So the Mavericks shouldn't have any problem getting up for the Los Angeles Clippers. But this, again, goes back to Luka Doncic, a guy who's going to be a first-team All-NBAer most likely for the second consecutive year, and the franchise that he is going to have to announce himself yet again in this series as the best player on the floor between these two teams. As the primary facilitator and passer, the guy who runs this offense, he is going to have to shoulder the load a little bit differently than he has even in last year's playoffs to give the Mavericks an opportunity to be able to come up with the upset in this series. You can go through all the numbers. He had a 40-point game against the Los Angeles Clippers in the March 17th matchup where he dropped 42 points, had 9 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks, and did a little bit of everything in that particular game. In the March 15th loss, he had a triple-double in that game where he went for 25 points, 10 rebounds, and 16 assists, but Kawhi Leonard outdueled him with 22 points and 4 steals. So we know what Luka Doncic is capable of against this basketball team. He's going to need that and much more in this series to be able to come up with this upset because the Clippers are deep. They rebound, they defend, and they can shoot the lights out. And when you've got guys like DeMarcus Cousins and Luke Kennard, Patrick Beverley, Rajon Rondo, and the amount of depth and veteran experience that they have on this basketball team, not to mention Serge Ibaka also, this team knows what they believe that they're capable of. And whether they tanked or not to get to the Dallas Mavericks, no one will ever truly know. But what we do know is that a precocious 22-year-old superstar is awaiting the Clippers yet again. And it's hard to bet against a guy who's got a second crack at an opportunity that brought the best out of him in his very first playoff series, and especially in his very first playoff game, dropping 42 points. I can't wait to see what an encore brings for Luka Doncic and his second playoff experience going around. But yes, all the ancillary parts in the supporting cast. I'm looking at you, Tim Hardaway. I'm looking at you, Dorian Finney-Smith, who had a terrific month of April. I'm looking at Kristaps Porzingis, who averaged 20 points and nearly 10 rebounds this season, had a true shooting percentage of over 58%. All of these guys are going to have to contribute to the Mavericks. But what this comes down to is Luka Doncic and his ability to shoulder the load, where it seemed like in the last couple of months of the season, especially in April and May, his three-point shot fell off dramatically after what he had done in March. He's going to have to find his legs after having 5 days off to have an opportunity to carry this Mavericks team because he's going to need all of his three-level scoring with his ability to get inside the mid-range game and the three-point shot that he's continuously developed to all come to fruition. Hey, and don't forget, Luka, make a pay at the free throw line with your ability to make free throws. You got to do that in this series. All that being said, it's time for the Mavericks and Clippers Part 2, Round 1 in the NBA playoffs. Can Luka Magic get it done against the Los Angeles Clippers? Let the games begin. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to hit that subscribe button for all things Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. This has been another episode of The Gray Area. We'll talk to you later. Peace.